2 for my students will be on thesis statements. So I'm not able to film my students in person due to permission forms, but this will be the type of lesson that we would go over. So this is a mock lesson on thesis statements. So something that I found from the on-demand writing was that the students have a hard time creating thesis statements that are clear, arguable, and subjective. So thesis statements must be clear, meaning what are you going to talk about in your paper? Your thesis statement should clearly state that. It needs to be arguable, meaning the students need to be able to argue it. Someone needs to be able to take the other side of it. If this is informational, it needs to be something that is easy to follow, and it needs to be subjective, meaning it's like your opinion or you're giving information about it. So a thesis statement must be the focus for your essay and a guideline for your body paragraphs. The students have already read the sample essay that I am using from them. So that's our mentor text. We've read it, we talked about it, they know what the story is about. So for this lesson, I'll remind them of what is a thesis statement in that mentor text. It's real discoveries come from careful experiments and study, and those take time and work. So this is a strong thesis statement for this essay because the rest of the paper discusses the experiences and discoveries and how they came to be. So the body paragraphs in the mentor text are all about this. They support the thesis statement, they prove the thesis statement. That's what makes the mentor text thesis statement a good, strong sample statement for the students to look at. It is clear, it outlines what's going to be in the paper, it's easy to follow. So this is a great mentor text thesis statement. Now I have written personally a student sample essay. It's an essay that I wrote that's based on a lot of the topics the students are going to be writing about. So the students are focusing a lot on how Iranians are faced with lacks of rights and what this means in their society. As a class, we've been reading a lot of texts about the Middle East, Asia, Africa, so they're all focusing their essays on those books that we've read. They are used to writing literary analysis essays, but this essay is a more informational one. So the sample essay that I have given them uses this as a thesis statement. So I am providing them with a thesis statement and showing them how to write one. Iranians are faced with a lack of rights and the citizens are adversely affected by this reality. The rest of the paper follows this idea and uses the body paragraphs to support the thesis. Follows these ideas. This thesis statement must be similar to the one you would write for your paper since the topics are similar. At this point in the lesson, I would then ask some of the students, what are you writing about? What is the focus of your body paragraph? So if your body paragraphs are focused on these 3 main ideas, how can we create a thesis statement around that? Obviously, I don't have a class to do that with, but that would be the next step in the process. And then having a mini little brainstorming session of how we can craft thesis statements for other people in the class. So what are they writing about? What are the main ideas in their paper? How can you write a thesis statement that then supports those ideas? So this mini lesson should take probably 10 minutes at the most. So like I outlined, I'm going to talk about the mentor text thesis statement. I'm going to talk about what a thesis statement needs to be. I'm going to give them the thesis statement I wrote and explain how that thesis statement supports what's in my paper. So they have read the mentor text and the paper I wrote so they understand the context of that. And then as a class, we're going to talk about what people are writing about, what are their main ideas, and then I will write on the board, model coming up with a thesis statement. So if a student tells me, oh, I'm writing about Iran, and I have these great sources that talk about how somebody was put in prison for writing an article that was deemed inappropriate. Well, okay, so what are the main ideas in your essay? How can we write a thesis statement around those ideas? Once the students are clear, so they've had 3 examples, the mentor text, the sample essay I wrote, and then the thesis statements we are coming up with as a class, they can spend some time writing their own thesis statements. Now, I'll give them as much time as they need. I think 30 minutes is a lot of time, but that's okay because if they finish early, then they can share. So after the lesson, they're going to get into groups. I think the best way to do this is pair and share with a partner, and together they will read their thesis statements, have the partner know what is the rest of the paper about so they can give them an idea of if this is a strong thesis statement or not. We'll come back as a class, we'll hear some thesis statements and critique them, and that should really be a solid lesson. So they're seeing a modeling of a thesis statement 3 times. We are brainstorming as a class, they're writing on their own, they're getting peer feedback, and finally, we're going to talk about it as a class one more time. So this is a really focused lesson on thesis statements. I haven't done this before. Usually I focus on like the entire introduction, but this is just on thesis statements. So the students have a lot to reference, and they also have peer feedback and classroom feedback. So hopefully this lesson is focused. I'm going to actually teach this lesson to my students at the high school. I'm at the middle school now, and then I will write up how it went and what I probably could have done differently for signature assignment part 4B.